One deed, two entities, and watch your name vanish while lawyers hit a brick wall trying to find you. In the next 8 minutes, you'll learn how to stack a land trust and a Wyoming LLC so your property is invisible to creditors, snoops, and nosy neighbors. Plus, you'll learn about the paperwork you need to avoid to make sure you keep all this airtight. All right, let's get started. Also, think of it this way. When you don't have privacy and all the assets are owned in your name or traced back to you, these invite bigger claims. So what we want to do is layer our entities to make sure we seal these gaps so people don't know what we own. Now, what am I getting at here? Well, it has to do with how you use your overall structuring to make sure if someone is looking at title, they cannot find your name. And one way we accomplish that is by stacking a land trust with an anonymous limited liability company. So what does that look like? What we'll do is we create this trust right here, a land trust. Now, a land trust is a title holding vehicle. That means that it's going to hold title to real estate. It doesn't have to register anywhere with any particular state. It is a private document that you create. So the terms of the trust and the parties to that trust are kept private, meaning that unlike a lot of LLCs that you have to record with the Secretary of State and you have to disclose addresses of registered agents, business addresses, address and names of members or managers, with a land trust, that doesn't happen because the land trust document, as I stated, isn't recorded anywhere. In fact, it's kept with your files in your private office. So what we do is we first start with creating this trust document. Now, let's say I have a piece of property right here, and I want anonymity for it. So if somebody looks, they don't see my name on title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a trust, and I'm going to list myself as the beneficiary of the trust. So the beneficiary of your trust is going to be you, equals you. All right, now why do I call you the beneficiary? Because the beneficiary is the owner, right? You're the owner of your property here. You want to make sure you're also the owner of the property when it's transferred into the trust. That's why it's essential you become the initial beneficiary of your trust. Now I throw a term at you, initial. The reason why I say that is that you're not going to stay there. We're actually going to take this trust and do something with it here in a moment. But when we're setting it up, we have to make sure that in order to transfer this property into the trust and not trigger a due on sale clause with a lender or trigger an acceleration clause, or a mortgage clause that triggers a tax with the state or a reassessment, we need to ensure that you're listed as the beneficiary of the trust. So that's why we always put the owner of the property as the trust beneficiary. Now, when setting up this trust, in order to get anonymity, you've probably seen some of my other videos on land trusts. And if you haven't, now's a good time after you've watched this video to go check those out so you understand how this tool works more effectively when it comes to implementing it in your overall strategy. But the high level here is that you have to have a trustee of your trust. So the trustee is very important. And many people think, hey, I'm going to be my own trustee. You do not want to be your own trustee because you're going to blow your anonymity if you're listed as your own trustee. So what you end up using is what we refer to as a nominee trustee. Now here at Anderson, we always use an attorney to serve as a nominee trustee. And so what our clients will actually do is they'll deed their property from their name. Say this was Jim. Jim's going to deed the property from his name to the nominee trustee's name. So let's say we were using myself, and I've been on many trusts this way. I'll say Clint Coons, Esquire, trustee of the land trust. So title actually transfers from Jim to my name as trustee. Now, before you start dropping into a panic there and clicking off this video thinking, oh, this is a way for them to gain title to my property, it does not work that way because the trust is set up so that the trustee has limited powers over that trust. In fact, we draft ours where the trustee is there to pay the property taxes and nothing else, provided that Jim gives them the money to pay the property taxes. But more importantly, when you transfer title in there, the trustee is going to resign. I've served on tens of thousands of trusts as a nominee trustee in this example right here. And immediately after the property has been deeded to my name, I then resign my position. And when I resign my position, I appoint Jim, who owns the property through the trust, as the trustee. In fact, it's already built into the trust document. It states when Clint resigns, Jim becomes a trustee of the trust. Now, remember I told you earlier, this trust is not recorded anywhere. So that resignation by my part and Jim stepping into my shoes, guess what? That's completely private. No one knows about that transaction. They don't see my resignation and they don't see the fact that Jim is now the trustee. So how does that help you, you're wondering? Well, if there's a creditor out there and they're performing an asset search on you to see whether or not you have any real estate in your own name, or maybe there's a party that's injured on your particular property and they want to know, hey, is this a deep pocket defendant that I can go after? Well, if you look, you're not going to see your name, Jim's name on there. What you're going to see is this attorney listed as a trustee. And that tells a lot of attorneys that pick up these types of clients, hey, the guy that's listed as a trustee doesn't own the property. Because attorneys typically will not list their title as follows: Clint Coons, Esquire. I mean, I'm telling the world, hey, there's an attorney here that's serving as the trustee, so there's a client behind me that I'm holding title for, and you're not going to be able to figure that out because we have attorney-client privilege. So by using the attorney in this matter, a nominee attorney, you're building this anonymity shield to keep people from discovering the fact that you own or you have an interest in this trust or you're associated back to that individual piece of property. And you're avoiding tax issues that I discussed, or a potential bank accelerating your mortgage. Now, if you just stop there, you have the anonymity. But what you're missing, though, is the asset protection. Because if something were to go wrong, they may not know that you're the beneficiary of this trust because on title, the house is held in my name as trustee. And I can only keep these creditors at bay for so long. I mean, if they still wanted to sue the trust and they served me as trustee, which has happened many times in my career, and I push back and I say, hey, you didn't get service on this trust because I'm no longer the acting trustee. And then they get really disgruntled and they throw a fit, which has happened many times. Eventually, they're going to gain service on the trust and they'll start their lawsuit. And when they start the lawsuit, that's when they're going to seek discovery to find out who the beneficiaries are. And if you're listed as a beneficiary on this trust at that point in time, then you will be fully liable for any claims that are brought against this trust. Now, this is a mistake that I see a lot of people on the internet make who talk about the benefits of land trust and promote their use. They will tell people, hey, if you've got 20 land trusts, stick all of them into one LLC, and if something goes wrong with land trust number one, all the other ones are protected. That's not true. That is, in fact, dangerous advice to be giving out, because with land trusts, absent the state of Florida, if a lawsuit happens here and you go down and you go after the beneficiary, say Jim kept it in his own name, and Jim happened to own multiple land trusts like this, well, I can take those land trusts from him. You see, the land trust does not offer asset protection from the property, nor does it protect the property from your claims. It provides anonymity. So we'll never do this. What we'll do instead is we will create an anonymous LLC. And so this is how this stack works to get not only asset protection and anonymity for your property, but also building out a structure that allows you moving forwards to have greater anonymity overall with all your business entities. So your property is protected and your business entities as well. So what we do is we create a Wyoming LLC. Okay, now if you've watched any of my videos on Wyoming LLCs, you know that when you set up an entity in Wyoming, they don't collect any information on you. Your address or your name, all of that will be hidden. You're using a professional registered agent, so you have complete privacy with your Wyoming LLC. And then you're going to be down here as the manager, so this would be Jim as the manager and Jim as the member of his LLC. Now, after that LLC is set up with complete privacy, as I just described, plus the phenomenal asset protection that Wyoming provides, what we're going to do is a simple sleight of hand. I mean, this is so simple. Anyone can do this. All you need to do is take your beneficial interest in this land trust. That is, it states that you're the beneficiary. If you read your trust agreement, if it's structured the right way, you can assign your interest. Now, for our clients, we do this all the time. We set up their structures this way. We will then take their land trust interest and we prepare an assignment. It's a one-page form that states Jim hereby assigns all of the ownership in the land trust to his Wyoming LLC. The Wyoming LLC signs an acceptance that it agrees to be a beneficiary in this land trust. And just like that, that land trust is now owned by the LLC. So if something were to happen with this property, then the liability goes to the LLC and not to Jim individually. So that's how you build out a stack where you're protecting yourself from the claims associated with your property. Now, there's a lot of details, of course, that are going to go into this when you're setting up or preparing the deed to make sure you're transferring it properly so you avoid any reassessments or transfer taxes. It's really simple to do. Most states allow for that you can transfer it into a trust and you will not be taxed. Now, going forwards, what do you do after this is all set up? Well, then you have to lease the property out. So the lease runs to the actual land trust. Now, a lot of people who are in this situation are using a property management company. You have a professional PM that's managing your property. All you're going to tell that professional PM is, hey, the land trust is now the owner of the property. And then when it comes to sending you an owner's statement, have them send the owner's statement directly to the Wyoming LLC. Now, the other thing you should not forget when you set up this type of structure, you want to make sure that you update your insurance endorsements to name the land trust as an additional insured or the primary insured under that policy. And then if you're going to name it as a primary insured, make sure you're named as an additional insured on that. And so if you have 3 properties, then you want to create 3 identical structures to what I just showed you here on the board. Now, here's some questions that come up all the time about this structure. Will lenders allow this? Listen, I've yet to run into a situation where a lender did not allow this type of structure or exercise the due on sale clause when it was set up properly. That's key here. If you're going to set this up, make sure you're doing it the right way and you should not have a problem. Okay, now, do you still need to have insurance when you set this up? Absolutely. Just because you're using a structure that provides asset protection does not absolve you of the necessity of having insurance. Otherwise, if you're involved in a lawsuit, a court will completely ignore your overall structure. And then another question comes up a lot with this planning is, hey, if I'm not using a traditional LLC, can I use a series LLC? And the answer to that is absolutely. In fact, this is one of the major strategies we have for people who live in Tennessee. We'll typically set up a series limited liability company and have properties held in the land trust owned by a separate cell of a Tennessee series limited liability company. And again, what we're focusing on there for the Tennessee investors is we're trying to avoid, or we're avoiding the franchise taxes that can result in certain types of setups. So the idea here is, listen, if you want to create a structure that gives you complete anonymity and asset protection, think about creating an entity stack that has a land trust with a limited liability company. Now, you can download the layered privacy checklist below. It's in the show notes, and hit subscribe for the weekly Asset Shield hacks and things that I release on a weekly basis. And if you want to speak to one of the members on my team about creating this type of structure that I just described for you, there's another link in the show notes that you can click on that will allow you to schedule your own free 45-minute strategy session where we'll delve into these types of structures and determine what works best for you in your investing situation. Take care.